What's up, guys? This is James, and here we have a replay review of me against Dmitri, aka Dotau, and he is the RBET Rulers champion, in fact, of 2023. He won Keegan's big invitational at the end of the year, and this is a match for War League. If you guys don't know what that is, I have a prior video about it, but I can put some link in the description about it. Basically, it's where all the best players are testing against each other and doing little team wars. Season 2 is already going right now, but it's a good place to learn, watch high-level replays, and that is what I have here today. People were pretty excited about this match this week because I don't know, I think we're two of the more experienced players in the league. So going into it, Dmitri has been playing a lot of frog decks, and also I know he's pretty experienced with Vayu as well. Had his own spin on it, as you can see, like he was topping with Legacy in the past, and I've just brought my pretty standard Vayu Turbo. It's actually like card for card the same list that I played in Vegas, so that's on a prior video that you can check out. But getting right into the match, because I don't want to make this too laborious. Also, I just want to say, if you appreciate this kind of content, subscribe, obviously hit the like, but also, if you want this applied to your own gameplay, I am still offering coaching sessions. You can reach out, in the comments or on Discord. I'm not really a hard person to get in touch with. This is going to be the YouTube version. We can do an even more in-depth version for you if you like. So here we go. I win the roll. Pitching Vayu to send the Necro. Now, it's always important to think about what you're going to send here. Like, you don't want to double up on the Sirocco engrave. You'd rather have double Vayu. So that's kind of why I send the Vayu first. And the Sirocco can, function better as a beater depending on what he's playing. Also, I really like stacking the defense with Necro. Anytime I know I'm going to want to pitch next turn, which I am, I already do have the bottomless, so that could protect the Grepper in one way, but if he has a removal spell like a Storm or MST, or just a way to put two monsters on board, then that Necro is going to come really handy. Obviously, Necro doesn't really lose any value by being there, so happy to send it. He actually mills really crazy. There's a lot of crazy mills in this match. It's actually a very back and forth and interesting match. That's why I chose to play it, and since he mills so good, he storms because now he knows he can get through the Gardna. The Trooper was probably just going to force the Gardna otherwise, but now he has an incentive to use his Storm. So a little unfortunate for me, but I still have some plays on my following turn, also depending on what his sets might be. So given the Caius is not going to be live this turn, I decide to allure. Maybe I can find my own heavy Storm, but I actually find a great series of draws in Dark Armed. Now, I decided to lead with Sirocco here, maybe trying to bait a bottomless. If I knew he didn't have bottomless, then it might be better to do something else, like summon Dark Arm first and then go for a Grepper play or something. But either way, the Roto is going to search me Armageddon for follow-up. He doesn't take the bait here, not necessarily meaning that he doesn't have bottomless. That means he could have bottomless and Deep Prison, for example, and wanting to catch the Sirocco and hold the bottomless for something like a Dark Armed. So because of that, I decided to use priority on the Armed Wing because I am just going to clear this anyway. And if he does bottomless here, then I'll still be able to threaten and attack over this. But since he doesn't use bottomless, and more or less you can presume he doesn't have it by this point, I pop everything and I just go for the attacks. One was a legacy, so it keeps his card value pretty high, even though he's relatively low. It gives him some comeback potential, and I know I'm in a Rota, but I don't want to reveal the information yet. And yeah, I would just, throughout this match, just pay attention to how I'm sequencing my plays, because as you can see, a lot of times I'm not trying to go all in. I really want to make sure I have follow-up. It's a phrase that gets used a lot in current Yu-Gi-Oh, but equally applies here, just to make sure that you're not getting blown out by whatever their crackback might be. Here, I go for this Armageddon. I know that he can TT here, but in all honesty, as you see, the TT is not super bad for me. I did that because I didn't have any Darks Engraved, so I needed a card to banish for the Dark Armed. But I still get my banish here, so he's technically up one card on me, but he's really, really low, and he needs to answer this ASAP. Now, he does have a good answer for it in the Gale, but I Deep Prison this partially because I don't want to get him closer to 3 darks if maybe he's been sitting on a dead Dark Armed. And, you know, the Mirror Force is just better. It can catch multiple monsters if he decides to go for a Armageddon, send Armor Master type play. I can summon the Hamster here, but he still has Mirror Force left in deck, as well as, like, if he deprisons the Armed Wing, then I'm stuck with my Hamster in attack. Not exactly great. But he goes really low, he takes the hit, not necessarily meaning that he doesn't have deprison, because he could be saving it, just given that he has a Grepher to run this over. But I am reading this as potential bottomless. You know, those are cards that would be dead in this scenario. Things like Burial, otherwise dead cards he would find a way to use. Return is also a relatively threatening card, and that's also a reason that, like, I wanted to keep Mirror Force. But Return's going to kind of blow me out either way, because he can make a synchro, but luckily he doesn't have it. Now, he does draw the prison, and here you know, he can still have the Mirror Force, and even though he's really low on cards, like, if he draws an Armageddon, then it is still kind of risky for me. So there's, I don't know, like, even though I just want to be aggressive and try to close out the game, I'm not necessarily out of the woods, depending on what his play might be. And so he has this, and now I basically put him in a position where he has to have both bottomless and deprison, which it was fairly likely that one of these might be a bottomless, so I'm not entirely sure on this play. But they could have also been another mirror, like the Mirror Force that he just held through that. So I target self, and he does use the bottomless to stop the burn damage. Now, someone pointed out that I could have attributed this set Raiko and targeted the Armed Wing. That would play around bottomless. Now, there's kind of a funny dynamic here where that would lose really hard to Solemn, and Solemn is definitely a card that he could have set, I think, at this point. He might have used it on the Hamster flip and then just traded the bottomless for the Armed Wing. I'm not entirely sure. But it's also that Dmitri doesn't often play Solemn. He's written many sort of like mini articles about how he doesn't think Solemn is very good, just like not a high activity card. Not sure I agree with him, but it's to say that against an opponent that I knew was playing Solemn, it would be pretty risky to tribute this face down Raiko for a Caius, target my Armed Wing, or with the intention of targeting my Armed Wing, because the Solemn there, I'm just stuck with Armed Wing in defense. You could easily crack back over. And the thing about all this is, even though it doesn't push quite as hard for lethal as I want it to, the Raiko is still a lethal threat, so I'm still sort of threatening lethal on the following turn. I think that last sequence could have been played a little better, but it also, like, I erred on the side of safety, and I don't think there was too much risk unless he drew really, really crazy. And also, crucially, he admits before revealing the face down that I targeted, because he knows it's game anyway, but he also doesn't want to show that it was Icarus attack. Here, I lead on setting Hamster. Now, these are spots where I feel like my experience with playing the Vayu mirror and just playing Vayu in general really come into play, because it's very uncommon that someone would set a blank Raiko turn one unless they had a lot of other plays, and even if they did have other plays, it might be more beneficial for you to like bluff a Gores or something. So I know that Dmitri is a very high level player, and for him to set a very obvious Raiko like that just isn't very likely. It's more than likely either a Hamster or potentially a Vayu or something. It was in fact Vayu, but the thing about all this is, even if it was a Raiko, or even if he did have like a Hamster into Raiko, and then Tribute for Caius play, I still have the Gores backing that up. So while in normal situations, it might be very beneficial for you to challenge the set with Card Trooper, and get your mills going, etc. Like, first of all, that's getting attacked back over for damage, then I'm kind of losing tempo. But it also, if he does find a way to Caius this Hamster, then he's probably just going to attack in my Gores anyway, and then I can get a lot of advantage. So Emil's kind of crazy again, and again, it's not to say that he's gotten really lucky these whole games. Like, I'm fully aware that I get pretty lucky over the course of this match. Now, it's a little bit risky for me to pop this Vayu here, because it can make his deck dev live. I'm not 100% that he's on deck dev, although it's, I think, becoming a little more popular in the Vayu side strategies. I use it, as you can see in one of these later matches, but I think that rather than him seeing another draw that could be a Card Trooper or something like that, I decide it's just worth it to pop here. And he actually does have the deck dev, but doesn't go for it main 2. I'm not entirely sure about that. He actually had 2 avenues to go for it. He could have made a Cataster, but I kind of think if I were him, I probably would have just wanted to get the information ASAP. But regardless, I can understand just wanting to save your resources. It's not a guarantee that deck dev is going to be super high value in this position. And also, he might be able to get a trap out of it if like he makes this, and I have bottomless. Spoilers, I do have bottomless, but you know, that could be beneficial to him. I also mill kind of crazy here. Hit my Vayu Sirocco and the Necro. Now, it's possible I could banish these, but I know I have a follow-up next turn with, you know, Armed Wing into Caius. And, like, I don't want to put more monsters on board to prevent my Gores. And he also has good crackback, like, from these. So, if he finds a way to answer my bottomless, I saw Dust Tornado in the prior game, for example, then there's a good chance he might be able to answer my whole board, and I don't really want that to happen. So, I'd rather save those, just set my bottomless. He does banish these. I think this is a good time to bottomless because, you know, this could lead to a synchro play with the Plague Engrave or a Tribute for Caius, etc. I am aware of the fact that DDV is a thing, but as you can see, my hand isn't really hurt too badly by DDV. He trades 2 for 2, or 3 for 2 maybe you could say, but I get a draw off the Trooper, and fortunately, unfortunately, that card, you know, it is a card that gets hit by DDV, but it's a Vayu. So really not that bad for me overall. And I don't think DDV gets much more value off this. DDV is somewhat of a volatile card in the Vayu mirror. I'm still not like 100% sure how I feel about it, but it can definitely be really, really good in some scenarios. And you know, even all things said, was pretty good for him here. So I draw Dark Arm, which is a really strong draw, and he's going to kind of have to dance around this the entire game. I can make it live this turn, despite having like what I have 5 Darks engraved right now, and that's kind of one of the beauties of Vayu Turbo. I start right away with this to banish, and now this puts me right at 3 engraved, but they're all 3, sorry, this puts me at 4, so I had 6 to start with. And I could like stack for Plague, and then like I have a couple ways to get to 5 here, or to get to 3. So this is a pretty interesting turn, I think, maybe the most interesting turn of the match, because he decides to go for Compulse here, and so that takes me off of my Vayu synchro. And I decide to, like I have 4 Darks engraved. He knows I'm gonna have to stack for Plague if I wanna make this Dark Arm live, which I don't necessarily have to do here. I could wait, but you know, every time you're waiting, you're just giving them more turns to draw and try to kill you. Like he knows about the Gores, but he can probably put himself in a good situation, maybe make a Stardust. So I do want to try to drop this Dark Arm this turn, at least that's what I'm thinking. And so I go Tribute, and here I do a kind of interesting play. I target a back row, and there's a couple reasons I do this. Like, first of all, he knows I have the Dark Arm, right? And he still chose to do this Compulse play. Like, yes, I could have Shotgun Tribute for Caius, and then like made, you know, made my Dark Arm live by like banishing, but he could have held the Compulse through that as well and like still been in a pretty good spot and have an answer to the Dark Arm. So part of the what I'm thinking here is because he used the Compulse, he must have another answer to the Dark Arm. It's not it's a little more complicated than that, but so with my Caius, because I think he might have a bottomless or a torrential set, I target one of the back row and thinking that if I can win the 50-50 and hit those, even if it's torrential, it puts me at 4 engraved, but I'll be able to banish the Necroguard on the next turn, still get more value off it, and probably just blow him out with Dark Armed. I'm also guaranteed to not hit another DDV target off the deck dev because I stacked. And now I do target the back row, and it just puts him in a pretty awkward spot. You know, he does have the Plague engraved, so a world that I just banish, target his monster, and then like try to Caius. I mean, I have the Necro, so maybe that was a little better, but I was just in the mindset of if I can hit the 50-50 or bait his removal in some type of way, then I could probably just win the game outright with Dark Armed. In actuality, he might have had a little bit of crackback, but I have Caius off the top as well. So what's interesting here is I think for a minute, because I hit the Dust Tornado, which is clearly not a card that would have answered the Dark Armed. So I'm still thinking that this last back row could be a card that answers it. And he says something in chat, and he says, surprise, I'm like thinking, and because I think for a relatively long time here, he says, it's surprised the situation to think in, to be honest. Like, saying that I should just drop the dark, like, obviously you would just think to drop the dark armor and blow me out. Like, you got the gift of topping dark armor, like, why not use it? But I wouldn't say him saying this in chat is what tilted, like, it was what tipped me off. But again, I was already thinking that I just think Dmitri's too high level a player to play his cards in this way, like use the compulse and not have another answer to the dark armed. So I just assumed this set was either TT or bottomless, and I could probably just get more value by trading here and kind of waiting out the DDV, which is exactly what happens. I trade, and it is a Raikou, so it now puts me to 4, and I can use this Gardna, and then this is the last turn of DDV, so he knows my whole hand at this point. And I'm still thinking this is DT, and now, at this point, he can't really commit because he knows I have Gores, and also, if he commits any monsters to the board, I'm going to be able to just blow them out with Dark Arm, like, and I'm guaranteed a 2-for-1, and then I have follow-up, especially when I draw Burial. So, now I'm in a relatively good spot, and I can put a lot, I can be presenting a lot of damage. You know, there's a world in which I could have maybe just dropped Dark Arm there, but this is also post-board, so you have to be really worried about DD Crow. Like, there is, I think, a lethal line where I go, like, drop, you know, use Burial. I mean, see, the thing is, I can't do it that turn, but I drew Burial that turn, I believe, and then I said it. So, like, if I had known, I could have banished the Gardna, Dark Armed, traded for the back row. I have another Vayu, so I'm basically getting 2 synchros. Like, I put all these back, I stack, and make an 8, and then make Armor Master, and then main phase 2 I contribute for Caius because I haven't used my normal summon. Like, that would present 6,500 points of damage. But there's Crow, there's Gores that plays into, and again, I just like have enough good cards that I think I can play a value game here. And so basically the situation that I've been trying to engineer, where he commits a monster to the board and I'm sort of able to force a 2-for-1 with my Dark Armed. And so he preemptively MSTs, I think, wanting to snipe a Solemn. I think that's why I did that. Maybe Return is also like to his benefit, so I don't get an extra card. I'm not entirely sure. But now I see a line where I can sort of play through the Torrential, but I'm still have to be kind of wary of Crow because, like, so here I'm gonna go stack and thinking that this would probably beat out the Torrential, and if that's the case, then I can still put myself back to 4, or back to 3 darks rather, by banishing Vayu and, you know, Rhoda for Armageddon, something like this, and still probably present lethal damage. Now, he says, think on activation, kind of bluffing that he has Crow, and if the first the first thing he said maybe gave me too much information, now he's making me think a little bit, because I'm like, does he have Crow? Like, would you Crow this? Or maybe we would wait and Crow on res to keep me off 3 darks, I don't know. But I make Stardust anyway, thinking that, you know, worst case, it's going to answer the Raikou. And I think I make I don't really miscount because I thought all through this ahead of time, but I also could have stacked the Brain Control, which obviously I'm not really going to use this turn, instead of the Gores, and that would have presented me with a different line later on. But again, I'm kind of just trying to hedge for a weird situation where you might hold Crow, or if I'm wrong about this being Torrential. And so I think I got a little bit in my own head here, and I make a slight error where I Caius this, again, like thinking that, like if I go Rhoda for Arma, send a 3rd, you know, Dark to Grave, and he Crows there, I'm going to be in a little bit of an awkward spot. Like, I'll have the Armor Master Stardust, maybe need to, you know, negate this, but if I'm wrong about the TT, you know, it could just get kind of tricky, and I've kind of blown my load, but I might still be able to get back to, back down to 3 on the following turn. So this was maybe a little imprecise, because I think what I should have done is probably just, yeah, summon the Arma, send a 3rd thing, drop Dark Armed, and it's presenting enough damage to be over 65 and still pretty safe into Gores. And in all honesty, by this point, it's really unlikely that he had the Crow. It's also really unlikely that he held the TT through all this, and like, I don't really think it was correct for him to do so. I mean, maybe I would have just killed him outright if everything resolved, but like if he TT'd on the when I was about to make Stardust, but I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure why he held it. I mean, I think he was just trying to hope I played into it, and I guess I sort of did. And so I wrote a main 2 just to shuffle away the Gores, because like the chances of him cracking my board and then like also attacking next turn. But he gets a good draw here, Rhoda. I mean, there were a lot of draws that put him in a good spot, and he has Burial as well. So like he was going to be pretty fine regardless. He maybe could have gone for even a bigger play here, but you know, respect. And he decides to do this, and he knows I have Brain Con again. Like that's sort of so. But here, like I'm actually in a relatively bad spot, despite him being quite low life. You know, we had this really strong crackback, and much like the prior turns where I kind of given Dmitri credit of like he's not just going to play into this for no reason. I kind of I'm aware that like I can brain control the Stardust and pop all this shit and probably just win, you know, like that's enough damage to win. But I probably should have just been more aware that he is going to have some kind of counter to that. The funny thing is, in a normal Vayu mirror, like very standard lists, there almost isn't any card that would counter this. Like I have you know, it's ironic that I drew the Vayu, because if I didn't draw that, then even compulsing the Dark Armed, I could Arma for Vayu and put myself back to 3. But basically when I set up this play, even the last turn, I was thinking that I'm going to deal so much damage and put up such a board that in order for him to crack it, he might be really vulnerable to brain control anyway. So that was sort of why I kept the brain over the gores. And I do just use this on the Stardust. And like I said, in a normal Vayu mirror, maybe Compulse, Chained Compulse is the only thing, but he's already gone through 2. So I'm not really thinking there's a third Compulse. Maybe Solemn, but again, he might not play Solemn. But he does have the Icarus attack. Now, this just completely blows me out here, and you know, props to him for concealing the information in game 1. So he targets my Stardust on his field and my Dark Armed, and this just leaves me in this sort of horrible spot, especially because I drew the Vayu. If I hadn't drawn the Vayu, I mean, I still would have been in a pretty bad spot, let's be real. But he plays it really safe here. I'm not entirely sure like this sequence was correct from him, but I understand why he did it. And like he puts back Vayu, even though it's pretty unlikely that like he would need to send another thing to grave in order to make it live, I guess. But it makes sense why he did all this. I just yeah. I don't know if there's something better he could have put back. I guess Vayu makes the most sense because I think he top decked Grepher there. So if he drew another Dark on a following turn, maybe able to get alive. But because of this, like I was worried the Goya was going to take my Vayu, I was going to have to swing over the Armageddon, etc. But I redraw the Gores. Like after shuffling away, I redraw the Gores. It's 2 turns down the line. So, you know, I think I make another slight error here where I banish with this. And the Gores is actually quite good here because I'm at 4,000, so he needs to get in with these guys in order to, you know, beat me. But here, if I had just not attacked, you know, he had a lot of live back row and saw 2 fresh draws, I want to say, from when I did that big Dark Arm play. So these were all cards he like could have been keeping in hand, but for him to have like exactly 3 live back row, there really isn't that much else it could be. So I probably should have been cognizant that it could be a deep reason, and I was, but it was at this point in the game where I was just kind of hoping that like I can trade over this, the silver one might crash, and then I can gorge on whatever he tries to summon. But I think not attacking there would have been pretty solid too. Like brain control beats me, there's Caius beats me, there's a few things that beat me, so it's not a foolproof play either. But in the situation given, I think if he swung with the silver one and crashed, and then tried to kill me with Grepher Stardust, then I would have been in a decent spot. But I'm just playing towards the Gores here and kind of hoping he didn't have another monster. If he had done something like, I mean, if he didn't have another monster, Stardust swing, Silverwind direct, then obviously I'm very good spot with the Gores. He's probably just going to Silverwind over the face down, attack with Stardust. Maybe he's reading it as a Raiga. So hard to say exactly what he would do there, but Gores could put me in a good spot. But because, you know, he has the Grepher, I only have this, and I would actually survive this turn. Like, you know, one of these would have to trade over this, deeper than the other one. I'm only taking 17. So I see another draw, but realistically, you know, this was game over. And he draws the breaker anyway, which, yeah, again, was sort of ineffectual by that point. But, you know, unlike the first game, I got to see that he had breaker. So that was a really well-played game by him, I think. Well, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say because I don't really agree with him holding this stuff, but I think I kind of threw. And, yeah, could have played it a bit better because the hands that I had, you know, really should have been I think, a win there. So really just messing up like the sequencing of those Caius turns and respecting Crow perhaps a little too much. I think that was the downfall. So here I open a pretty good hand, and like I don't set the deck dev because he, like, I don't know, there's a number of reasons. Like a lot of times when I set my Raikos or something turn one, also, like I said in the last game, it's uncommon for people to set a blank Raiko in the mirror like this, or really post-board in general. When the matchups are known, you try to avoid doing that because they can just trade with the trooper or trade by their like if he went Raiko attack. Like sometimes people respect Hamster too much to do that, but I kind of knew it would catch him off guard here for me just to do this. And also I didn't really have any other play, let's be real. Getting any milling, even if I have to trade for a low value card, is helpful because now I do the Dark Arm. I mean, I didn't have the Dark Arm last turn, but so yeah, Dark Arm 3 out of 3 games, you gotta love to see it. But I also don't set the deck dev because if I flip this and it's a Dust Tornado, then he can trade with my back row. So a lot of times I won't set back row behind my Raiko. That's a good little tip for you guys to keep in mind. I hit another Necrogranite, so all of our mills honestly have been pretty favorable. I think I do this kind of quickly. I maybe should have waited and pretended I was thinking a little bit more, so maybe the DDV wasn't so obvious, because I think he knows I have DDV. Like if you look at what he does here, it's not that he had such good other plays, but setting the Storm I think might be kind of a tell that he wants to conceal that information. And he even asks, like he's aware that it's this card sided in the mirror, because he has Priority Battle Step, which is just a funny way of saying like after attack deck, you know, so after the window to deep prison. So because I attack here hoping to bait a deep prison, and he doesn't fall for it. I mean, he doesn't need to do anything there. He would just rather trade with the Raiko and pop it in damage step anyway. But because he doesn't do anything, I don't want this Raiko to resolve, so I use the deck dev. A little more vulnerable to something like a Solemn or a Trapstone, but again, doesn't play Solemn. So he hits the Gale off the top, and this is like a pretty considerably better deck dev for me than it was for him in game two. But I can just kind of get my advantage train with Raikos and probably drop this Dark Arm fairly soon. So that's what I'm looking to do. He doesn't have a way to answer this. I know he has the brain control, so I have to be a little careful of dropping my Dark Arm into that. I do have the third Dark now, and I basically have a lethal setup here because I also have the MST. There's really nothing that could stop this in my mind. I don't think there's anything that stops it because I know his hand too. Maybe some weird like Transmigration Prophecy or something. But yeah, this is just Armory Arm, or I could have gone Colossal and then brought back the Plague. It could have been game in a few different ways. So this game 3 was a little bit anticlimactic, but I do think that, I don't know, you could say I didn't play perfectly in game 2, and the end of game 1 was a little sloppy, but against these high-level opponents and a dragged-out match like that, I think it's especially hard to play 100% perfectly, even though that's always my goal. But I hope you guys enjoyed this replay, and I know this was a little long-winded, but again, I hope you guys like this kind of stuff. Like, this is just a very complicated match, I feel, even though, yeah, I got a bit lucky and was able to take it off that. But Dmitri's a good guy, a great player, and even though I got the better of him this time, I'm sure we'll be seeing him again at the top tables of tournaments and probably even in the War League playoffs. But that'll do it for this video. Check out the War League if you guys are interested. And peace. Thank you again for getting me to 1K subs. That's as of yesterday. It was on stream. Go watch that back. It was a little celebration. But yeah, shout out to Dmitri. Shout out to you guys. Peace.